Okay, we covered a few different things and different ways to go about it so far today, okay? Again, when you look at your golf swing, three different things that we're looking at. Your fitness is what you're doing down at Weber right now. Swing technique, we'll get into in a moment, and also movement skill as well, okay? And we'll kind of focus on those two areas to begin with. So a couple things here, just when we take a look at your golf swing, that concern me just a little bit here. You'll notice just from a setup standpoint, we tend to be pretty far back, on our feet. Um, the shoulder, is kind of even with the middle of the foot. If you take a look at, that tends to get the hips a little bit too far back behind you or the tailbone. And that puts you in a position right here where we might be just a little bit too vertical or upright, with our spinal posture at address, okay? Typically, the best ball strikers in the world are somewhere between 35, 45 degrees of forward tilt. So if you take a look towards the end, this was the last swing that we made. We're starting to get down there a little bit, but when we first worked on it, take a look at this here. When we first started working on that spinal tilt or posture, you take a look at where we were. Okay, so you'll notice in here right now how we were starting to get down somewhere closer to that 55 degree type of range, okay, 56 degrees. We want to still keep working on getting more and more forward right now and just keep trying to develop that field. This one here should be pretty much on the money just looking at it. So you're right down to 55 degrees. So we'll eliminate a couple of these lines here for a moment. And you can see how there's a little bit of a change right now going on in your spine too. It's starting to become a little bit straighter as opposed to a little bit rounded up top here. You'll also notice that there's a little bit more tilt now because we're tilting more from the hip joints in this pelvic region, right? If we drop that down, you see a little difference with those angles. So basically, we're just trying to almost do like a little mini toe touch, but just touching the top of our knees to get ourselves into position. So that should start to provide a little more support and create a little bit more stability, in your golf swing. Looking at the swing from this angle, here's our normal setup positioning, right? And you can still see that right foot. Here we go. This is where we started talking about that. So if we look right in here, you'll notice that we're starting to kind of change our look with our setup, right? Left hip, more over the left heel. We're basically trying to align these joints, so to speak, okay? Left side, it's like a straight line, and it kind of kinks in on this side. It kind of forms a backwards letter K. Here, it doesn't look nearly as stable. You can see the way the back foot is. I'd still like to see this back foot, especially with the over rotation that we saw with your hips, to start to get much square at address. If that means, put down a club and another one at right angles just to find that foot position, go ahead and do that for a while, okay? I'm kind of, I guess in my mind, the way I'm looking at this is, we start building it a little bit from the posture, start building it from the ground up, which we'll get into here in a second, and then we start to have that base, to fine-tune swing planes and things like that down the road. So basically, that looked pretty good there. If we look at the move coming back, we notice that there's pretty good rotation of the hips, at the top of the swing. I think we saw them in the 66, I believe, degree range, and the shoulders were like 100 and something degrees of rotation, which is a little bit too much. We want to, basically what you're trying to achieve, especially with these irons, less coming back normally equals more coming through, okay? And for you to actually generate more speed, we start to do it, through that hip area and hit the ball further that way. Does that make sense a little bit? All right, so I think you kind of got the gist of what we were after there. You can see, normally, even more hip turn, that where we were before, we'll start to restrict that. So what we did, we went back out and we started to show you a couple of drills here. One of the drills is single leg post swings. I'd like to see the left foot pulled back some more when you do this and have the front knee flexed forward just a little bit more so it kind of covers the shoelaces a little bit, okay? That will force your hips to tilt correctly as well. But again, just trying to reduce a little bit of that hip rotation coming back compared with what we normally saw right in here, right? We also did another drill, and this would be a great way to practice, where we actually had you stand on a couple clubs or any type of unstable type of surface, right? And you'll notice here coming up right now, you can see the nice position you start to put yourself into, and you'll notice we've reduced a little bit of that hip rotation by creating that stability downstairs compared to where we are normally, okay? Does that make sense a little bit? So I think if you hammer away at this, you're going to pick the feel up for it pretty quick. Then it's a question of finding impact and stuff after that. Does that make sense? All right. We'll play a couple of these just full speed here for a minute so you get a chance. Oh, here's another one here. That's when we had you just standing on the clubs. And we look here. And that's kind of our normal positioning up top, right? So we're just trying to reduce that. If we look at the swing from here, we'll swing this full speed. So I think you're, kind of on the money, with what you're talking about with your swing path and stuff like that before. We definitely want to address this first move away from the golf ball from a swing technique standpoint. So everything else prior to this was basically setup fundamentals and just working on movement skill. Swing technique, we need to eventually eliminate this. Okay, and the way we'll go about doing that is a little drill that we call the right arm straight drill. And basically with the right arm straight, which should be a little bit further forward here. Just be a moment to find it. That was not it. Oh, where's it at? There you go. That's when we were doing it. So you can see right in here, the club head's still a little bit inside the hands. We'd ultimately like to see a little bit more out in that area. Okay? But you'll notice, by keeping the right arm straight, elongated, it starts to eliminate a little bit of that tendency. So you can practice a few of those drills too. Sound cool? Show you one last thing. And so much of it, with the posture is just to create more and more stability, obviously, right? But this is Annika. So you can see where her golf club is at the start, right? Then you can see the lower body really firing, right? You can see how open the hips end up towards impact. And she has just a little bit more space and stuff there. Okay, so I'm going to sum it up one last time. You'll work on your posture going into the tournament, creating more forward tilt, and you're going to get used to swinging from that different position. Drill-wise, you've got the right arm straight drill. Maybe 5 minutes of practice, doing that, each time you go hit golf balls. I'd spend a lot of time right now in your fitness stuff working on the early separation for the upper body from the lower, starting to try and restrict the hip turn coming back. Sound good? All right.